What's good, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with my 2023 rookie draft rankings following the NFL draft. Going to be coming to you guys with a bunch of content. I am back now for the season. Going to be dropping my mock drafts too. Now that the NFL draft is done, we know a lot about the fantasy situations for most of these teams. Few dominoes left to fall, but really have a good idea. So a bunch of content going to be coming your guys' way. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and if you leave any comments in the comment section down below, I will respond. If you have any fantasy football questions you want answered, I got you guys. Appreciate all the comments, all the support. Sorry if I misspelled anyone's names here. You guys know who I'm talking about, though. Let's hop into it. Okay, number 1, Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. Ideal landing spot for him. I expect 350 plus touches behind one of the better offensive lines in football, better running situations in football, period, for an NFL running back. This is basically as good of a landing spot as you could have hoped for from a volume perspective. The offense, I think, will limit his overall upside touchdown-wise, but he's a good enough player where I still expect double-digit touchdowns for him. And when you get that type of volume, you're talking about 1,200 rushing yards as a floor, I feel like, for him, barring injury. And honestly, I think he can do a lot more. I think I'll probably have him projected for potentially 1,500 plus rushing yards this season. But yeah, just dynamite if you have that number 1 rookie pick. It's Bijan by a mile in Atlanta. Moving on, Jahymr Gibbs, running back in Detroit. The reason I have him ranked ahead of Jaxson Smith-Njigba, which I probably would have had the other way around prior to the draft, is just the draft capital that was spent on Gibbs. He was the 12th overall pick in the draft, first-round running back. With that, you know that he's just going to get a ton of volume. And Jaxson Smith-Njigba, the landing spot, although not a bad one, I just log-jammed a receiver there for Seattle with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett there. And you look at those deals, they could potentially be there for another year or two. That's the reason I have those guys flip-flopped. I do think Jaxson Smith-Njigba, though, is easily the third pick to me. There's a big tier break after that because of the landing spots in the next 4 receivers I'll talk about. But Njigba and Gibbs on the same tier to me, and Bijan is a tier of himself. Then we hop in this 4th tier. I'm really not even excited about many of these picks just because of the landing spots. A lot of these guys, I have Addison at 4 just because I think he's a safe bet with the landing spot. Kirk Cousins is going to throw for 4,000 plus yards. You can take that to the bank, probably 4,500 plus. And then you have Justin Jefferson who's going to draw coverage away from you, but I think Justin Jefferson does limit his overall upside, although I think he could get an Adam Thielen-sized target share right at the bat, and I do think he's a talented separator, a good route runner. So I think he'll be productive. I just don't know if he has the upside that you would love. Moving on to number 5, Zay Flowers. I think Flowers, to me, is a better wide receiver than Jordan Addison, but the throwing volume usually isn't super high in Baltimore. Obviously, they're mixing up their offensive scheme this year, brought in a new OC. They're said that they're going to throw the ball more, but you also have Mark Andrews. You also have Odell Beckham Jr. I really like the talent, but I just don't know if the landing spot is good enough to get, the wide receiver 1 amount of targets we were hoping for Zay Flowers. Love the talent, though, like I said. 6, Quentin Johnson. Talk about a high upside guy. I think this is the highest upside of the 3 guys I just talked about because of Justin Herbert and how good he is. I think there's a really good chance that he could be, Mike Williams' replacement here in a year or two. Mike Williams is currently on a deal, and I think they'll keep Keenan Allen around. I think but Quentin Johnson and Mike Williams' skill sets are similar to me. Going to be an exciting year to have Justin Herbert in fantasy as well with that landing spot there. I think Quentin Johnson does have really high upside, like I mentioned, but also just the lowest floor. I think there's a chance, he struggles in the NFL. I think there were some question marks in his game, although I think he's extremely athletic and, he looked great out there. He definitely had his moments, but there was he wasn't the most consistent wide receiver, I guess is the way I would say it, but good athlete. Speaking of good athletes, moving on to number 7, Anthony Richardson. With the draft capital the Colts spent on him and taking him at number 3 overall, and the rushing upside that he brings, I think 800 rushing yards as a rookie is a reasonable thing to think about or expect from Anthony Richardson. I think he's going to be used similar to Jalen Hurts with Shane Steichen, their new head coach there. He's going to use him an absolute ton running the ball. And I do worry about the passing and just the adjustment to the NFL in year 1, but I think his fantasy upside is just so high. That's why I'm willing to take him after those first-round wide receivers are gone. Number 8, Bryce Young is who I have next. I think Bryce Young is a solid player. I think he could be better than people think in the NFL. I think basically skill-wise, he is really good to me. It's just, can he hold up to me? but I think that he will, and I think that Carolina is a decent landing spot with the weapons they have. Not great, but I mean, they took a offensive tackle, their first-round pick last year. They've got some options down there. I expect them to run the ball a lot, but I think he's a solid enough quarterback that I'm willing to take him. A lot of guys I don't really love in this draft class once you get to these middle rounds, to be honest with you. I feel like it's a big tier to me of a bunch of guys that are very similar. Moving on to number 9, Rashee Rice. I really liked Rashee Rice's film, and the notes that I had on him was like if he runs a decent 40, I would move him up my rankings quite a bit, to be honest. He's really good at the catch point, which I like, and moving to Kansas City or getting drafted by Kansas City in the second round, great option for Rashee Rice. Really excited about him, and I think he's going to have every opportunity to be the most productive wide receiver for Kansas City, in the future. Obviously, there's a dynasty draft, but he would be the guy I would bet on. And I mean, eventually too, like it's reasonable to believe. Obviously, Travis Kelce is still dominating, but at some point in Rashee Rice's 4-year rookie deal, it's reasonable to think that Travis Kelce can potentially retire at some point. Maybe that 3rd or 4th year. And obviously that opens up even more targets, more upside. That's well down the road, but still something to think about. 10, Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver for Carolina, was taken with high draft capital early in that second round. Very athletic. When I watched his film, I thought he looked really good. He might not have crazy stats, but 6'2", 215, ran a good 40, just really athletic. And like I said, with that draft capital and their current wide receiver depth chart, I expect him to be Bryce Young's number 1. And I think he's an exciting option here at the back end of the draft. He's one of the guys I'd be actually glad to take home on my team. Him and Rashee Rice I'd be pretty excited about, to be honest with you. If I have a back of the first-round pick as far as wide receivers go. I just think they're under the radar, and I think even there'll be people that get those guys in the second round, too, in drafts. So, number 11, C.J. Stroud. High draft capital set on him in the Houston Texans. I think he's got a little bit more upside than people think, too, because he was banged up a little bit his last year at Ohio State. Maybe he runs the ball a little bit more in the league due to necessity, maybe. But yeah, I think the draft capital and then the arm he's got, just the upside. I think he could be a good quarterback. And Houston's not a great landing spot, but at least they have Laremy Tunsil. They have some pieces along that offensive line that can hopefully help hold up, even if he doesn't have a ton of weapons there. 12, Dalton Kincaid, taken by Buffalo, first-round pick. I really saw this as an aggressive move by Buffalo to get the weapon that was still on the board after those receivers went off. And I think he'll be utilizing the slot a good amount this year. Also, Dalton Kincaid was reportedly a top 15 pick if he didn't have his back injury. So assuming he can stay healthy, he should be able to contribute. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to be a major contributor for fantasy from a tight end perspective, but dynasty-wise, I think he's worth the pick in the first round. 13, Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver for the Giants. He wasn't taken until the 3rd round. I just really like his game, and I think that he will be able to separate himself from the depth chart in the Giants team into their number 1 receiver. I mean, honestly, you combine both those things. Maybe he should be a first-round pick. It's just the draft capital and Daniel Jones that bring him down a bit to me. But, yeah, I really like Jalen Hyatt. I loved his tape, and I think he offers a lot of upside. 14, Michael Mayer, tight end, Las Vegas. He was taken the 2nd round. They traded up to get him. I think that he is an underrated talent, honestly, that he ended up going so late. I thought he was a first-round pick at tight end. I think obviously the running game isn't a super big aspect in fantasy football, but that'll keep him on the field for more downs, more play action opportunities, things like that. And then the depth chart was just devoid of guys at that position for them after the Darren Waller trade. I think he should get a good amount of targets even right away. That's why I think he's worth the upside to me. I think he doesn't potentially have elite upside as a tight end. I do think that is an accurate assertion. I think that's why he fell in the draft a little bit. But I think he's got really solid, he could be an 800 a year guy, maybe even 1,000 yards on some seasons, receiving wise to me. And yeah, I think that's worth the risk at this point in the draft. 15, Zach Charbonnet, running back, Seattle, 2nd round pick. Jaxson Smith-Njigba and Zach Charbonnet to Seattle were 2 of the bigger bummers for rookie drafts and just overall value in these drafts because the depth chart's ahead of them. Charbonnet is going to get work, and he is talented. Maybe he should be higher on this list. I firmly believe, though, that Kenneth Walker is the superior talent and will get the lion's share of the work. Again, we've seen guys, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara in the same backfield be very productive for fantasy football before. but I just don't know if I'm really willing to go all in on both these guys. I will say this: if Ken Walker goes down, Zach Charbonnet will be excellent for fantasy football. I really like the talent. He's my number 3 running back in this class behind Robinson and Gibbs. Just don't enjoy the landing spot, really. 16, Kendre Miller, running back for New Orleans. Young back, taken from TCU. He's got good tape. He looks explosive. Log jammed a little bit in front of him, but he's young enough, and the draft capital is high enough. I believe he's a 3rd-round pick that I do believe he will see the field sooner rather than later. And I think he'll get some opportunities this year, and then a year from now, I think he could potentially have an opportunity to be the guy Kamara could be moved on from with his recent production. Williams may not be, but I think there's a real situation where Kendre Miller could be the back you want next year instead of Williams or Kamara, potentially, if Kamara's off the team. And then we see Kendre Miller play well and Jamal Williams, even if he's still Jamal Williams, I think Kendre Miller is more upside to me. Moving on, 17, Josh Downs, wide receiver, Indy. I really like this one because of the depth chart around him, and I think Downs is just a really good slot wide receiver. Don't love that Anthony Richardson is his quarterback as much upside as Anthony Richardson has for fantasy football. Throwing the ball, I think he's going to be struggle, especially early in his career. So that limits him, but I think the depth chart and the talent, I think Josh Downs is a really good change of direction, really good slot receiver. Very productive at North Carolina. I like betting on guys that produced in college, especially he's got great tape. There's really not much to hate about Josh Downs. And like I said, plenty of opportunity there. It's really just the quarterback to me that brings him down a little bit on this list. 18, Jaden Reed. Same thing for him. The depth chart around him. He's going to step in right away and be the starting slot receiver for the Green Bay Packers. And if Jordan Love is better than people thinks or even throws, 25 touchdowns, it's Christian Watson even has 10 of those. You got to throw some of those around to some of these other guys. And I think Jaden Reed could be an 80-catch-plus type of wide receiver. Had 1,000 yards 2 years ago at Michigan State, so that is something to boost him as well. And then struggled a little bit this last year with poor quarterback play, but I think he's better than people think. Was very good the Senior Bowl reportedly as well. 19, Marvin Mims, wide receiver for Denver, speedster, 2nd-round pick. He might just be too low, honestly, because I do think that Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy is going to be out of town before we know it. In a year, I bet one of them is off the roster. Marvin Mims is starting wide receiver. Obviously, we don't really know how good Russ is. I think Russ, no matter what, though, will be better with Sean Payton in town. But yeah, he is fast and he could have an opportunity. I just think it's probably a year away to me. I think he'll still be used this year, and he could be sneaky productive because he's one of those big play wide receivers. Doesn't need a ton of targets, but we'll see. Roschon Johnson, running back Chicago. He's a guy I think that has a lot of upside. He could be the starting running back for the Chicago Bears at some point this season. Not only at some point, he could win the job potentially. But honestly, I think Khalil Herbert is pretty good, and I'm not going to bet on him right off the bat. I think they'll split work, though, and I do think Roschon Johnson's a good back, and there's opportunity there. I just think overall the offense isn't great, and you add in that I think Herbert is going to be better. It leaves a lot to be desired to me just in the landing spot. But I do think the talent's good, and I do think he could, grab that opportunity. 21, Devin Achane. This one might seem a little low. I just think he lacks upside with the touch count-wise. He's just so small. I don't see him consistently getting more than 10 touches a game. Now, is he absolutely going to crib some of those in this Miami Dolphins running scheme? Absolutely. He's going to have some long touchdowns, some good games. I just think he's going to be a little bit hit or miss. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if he had 6 pretty darn good games by the end of this season. 22, Sam Laporta, left that note in, obviously. Just watching his tape, I just really liked the athleticism that he had. I think Detroit, obviously devoid that tight end position after trading Hawkinson, so steps into a good role. It's just tight ends in general. They usually take a while, and their hit rate's just all over the place. But I really liked the film, to be honest with you. I like Sam Laporta. Definitely worth a shot to me if you need a tight end at pretty much anywhere in the middle of the second round. A lot of these guys, too, if you liked one of these guys more than the other, obviously, I don't mind taking, a lot of these guys or any of these guys really over one or the other because they're in a big tier to me. I mean, obviously, I rank them. This is how I would take them. But, you have to factor in your roster somewhat as well. But I would, taking best player available, especially if you're far away in Dynasty, is always the move. I do player-specific a little bit more if I think my team is closer to contending. 23, Tank Dell, wide receiver, Houston. Very productive wide receiver in college. Small, but like I said, so productive. 1,300 yards in back-to-back seasons. And Talk about opportunity, the wide receiver core. This guy honestly might move up my list. Again, it's just the size is really my only concern, but the kid can play. He proved that. And CJ Stroud's there, who I do believe in. And he gets, like I said, it could go to a team with a depth chart that he could, basically instantly, if he plays well, be the number one. 24, Tank Bigsby, running back, Jacksonville. I do think he's going to get work right away. I thought he's good at Auburn, had a bad offensive line at Auburn too, especially his last year there. But I think he will get work right away with Travis Etienne, the build that Travis Etienne has. So I think he is good, but I do just think Travis Etienne is going to be better than him. But maybe he should be a little bit higher on his list because Travis Etienne has already shown an injury history, and obviously running backs at that position anyway just go down a lot. If they do, I do think Tank basically could be pretty good, and I think that offense will be pretty good. But, more of an insurance policy to me. 25, Will Levis, quarterback, Tennessee. The only reason I have him ahead of Hendon Hooker is just because I think the upside is a little bit higher for Levis. And I think Hooker, though, is the better quarterback. I think he's got a better chance of winning that starting job for a long period of time in Detroit than Levis. I do think Levis will play pretty early in Tennessee, but I don't think he'll play much this year. I think Tannehill will be better than him, and then I think maybe next year they'll move on to Levis. I think Levis has a little bit more upside. I think he has more rushing capability as well, and if he hits with the arm talent that he has, he could be really good. But I feel like I don't know. I wouldn't bet on Will Levis to be great in the NFL. I do think Hendon Hooker will be an NFL starter. I just don't know if he has the upside to inspire me to take a backup quarterback at this point much higher. 27, Cedric Tillman, wide receiver for Cleveland. Tillman was good. He played at Tennessee as well with Hendon Hooker. Good tape, solid size. I liked him. It's just obviously he's the last guy on my list, but I didn't, he looks like a good talent. He goes to Cleveland, another place where behind Amari Cooper, there's a lot of opportunity to be taken advantage of. If you guys have made it to this point in the video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below. I'll respond. As always, this has been Fantasy Joe. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait for this season with all of you. It's going to be a ton of fun.